This video comes from, I think it's May 2019 Bexar County Master Gardener meeting, where we had our guest speaker, Dr. Rector from Texas A&M University in College Station. If he is ever in your area giving a presentation, or if you have a gardening organization like the Master Gardeners and you need a speaker, see if he is available. As a Master Gardener, he has inspired me to do research into the most obscure areas, to the most detailed trivia, because of his presentation, his challenge to gain knowledge. Dr. Rector, I didn't quite know how to entitle this presentation. This is Dr. Rector speaking on sort of the historical horticulture development of Texas. I don't know how to explain it, except it is inspirational for me. A couple things about this video. This is the first video I ever took on an iPhone to even start this, the idea of this series a couple of years, 2-3 years ago. So about 2/3, 3/4 the way in, it gets a little blurry. I apologize for that. I don't know how it happened. I don't know how to fix it. The second thing is, I only got about 30 minutes of his 45-minute presentation, and for that I apologize. But this is Dr. Rector, and you'll get a flavor for his passion for the state of Texas and our magnificent land history. So Dr. Barron and the history of Texas land.
Today, for your monthly meeting, I've been called on to come in and provide further education. Education is so valuable because having knowledge and understanding of where we live is so important. That's even a proverb in the Bible. It says knowledge and understanding are worth more than all the gold and silver on the earth. Because see, when you deal with the soil and you deal with weather in Texas, and you deal with unknown fertilizers and unknown plants that you put in your yard, how can you be successful? Did you study everything to its ultimate? Remember, one of the greatest books that came out in the 60s, it was the Zen Master's book, and it was on archery. And the book is this big, just for a guy learning how to have the correct wood, the correct line, the correct arrow, but know the aerodynamics, the physiology, the biology of the wood, where the cord came from, what its tensile strength was. And so if I took a topic and I studied it to its end, you would have studied everything that we know today. Because in our ecosystem, everything is interconnected. Nothing stands alone. So think about your yard. Does it stand alone? Does your garden stand alone? Is there ever anything that you planted in the lawn that gets in the garden? Well, aren't they two different entities, two different ecosystems? This one's a plowed one that I'm going to raise my tomatoes, my okra, my cabbage. I'm going to and raise all the good food things that I'm going to have, and jalapeno peppers and chili patines and so forth. And then out here in the yard, it's going to be St. Augustine using 52 inches of rainfall a year, because St. Augustine is native to the southern reach of the Gulf of Mexico. That means it's native to the southern hemisphere, not the northern hemisphere that you live in. So think about St. Augustine. I grew up in San Angelo. I grew up in the 20-inch rain belt. Y'all are living in the 32, 35-inch rain belt. And for the last 5 years, what is the average rainfall? I mean, in 2015 at College Station, the 40-inch rainfall, we got 77.87 inches of rain. Double the rainfall. Did you know that the plants that are native there did not grow twice as big? Just because they had more water. Because isn't water the limiting element? And so in the 20-inch rain belt, when my parents bought their final home of their lifetime, it had St. Augustine in front and backyard. Because of the 20-inch rainfall belt, and the grass needed 32 more inches They had to water every month to keep the grass alive. And do y'all know who played Davy Crockett in the movies first? And yes, it was not John Wayne. He's a young guy. Yeah, Fess Parker. Exactly. Fess Parker grew up 8 blocks from where I grew up. He is a San Angelo boy. And his family went out, and right in February, before things started to green up, they burned their whole yard. Guess who had the first green yard in the spring with no dead stuff in it? Fess Parker's family. Until the day San Angelo said, no, we're not going to allow burning in town anymore because you'll end up burning down your house. And so they outlawed burning, and so their yard became like everybody else's. In San Angelo, the month of December, we get an average of 0.8 of an inch of rain. In January, we get 0.7 of an inch of rain. Now, does anybody grow grass in the wintertime to make your yard look like the Bahamas and Jamaica? Because in Texas, nothing was green in the wintertime. Everything that was a perennial, dominated in the state of Texas by warm season perennials, everything turned brown, yellow, and tan.
What good did the burning do?
The burning got the dead stuff out of the way so the sun could hit the crown where the grass was putting up new leaves. Leaves don't occur up in the air on stems, not on long grass. They occur from the crown where the roots go into the ground. That's where the new leaves come from. So if you're leaving too much unmowed stuff that's dead, you delay the green up of your grass in the spring. So when did the fires naturally occur in the state of Texas? When?
End of the winter.
Are you ready? Y'all came to this class and got certified. You still lack knowledge. You came into the class with wives' tales and hearsay and prophecies and consultants that think they know what the earth is doing. But the fires of Texas burned in August and September on the hottest, driest days of the summer into the early fall. We didn't have any winter burns unless the Indians lit one. So the natural fires were from convection storms, thunderheads with lightning that hit the prairie, lit the prairie up, and then it burned. So how often did it burn here in Bexar County? What was the known fact about fire in Bexar County prior to European settlement?
Every year.
Yeah, you burned every 4 to 7 years. And in some of the higher places going toward burning, it only burned every 7 to 11 years. But all of Texas was in a natural fire regime at the time of settlement in 1823. So, what did Bexar County look like in 1823? Were y'all here? Well, how in the hell do y'all know? The camera wasn't invented till 1847. We were already a state in the Union by 1847. But it was what people wrote down that they said it looked like. The people at all of our missions that are in the area, the early naturalists that came through, the guys trapping for fur-bearing animals, the people that were on surveys, like with the U.S.-Mexico survey in 1850. They took notes and wrote down what things looked like. And then the great historian for WOAI, he's now passed away. What was his name?
Henry Guerra.
Yeah, Henry. Henry gave a talk at the Omni in 1996 describing how he got in a wagon in San Antonio and rode the dirt roads to Laredo. He said there was no brush between San Antonio and Laredo. It's changed, hadn't it? Because who arrived? The nasty humans that don't know anything, but brought knowledge from another world across the ocean, thinking that Texas and all of North America should react identically the same. And so it doesn't work out that way, to tell you the truth. And so Texas is an entity of its own. It does its own thing. And I can't use what we use in New York and Massachusetts to predict what's going to happen in Texas. Matter of fact, there isn't a world model that I've seen yet that has predicted anything correctly. Because see, in the ecosystem, there's still things that we haven't learned about. So think about the county. It's changed. Look at this building right here. It's built on a concrete slab. The slab is about this thick to hold up this 2 levels of the building. Before they built the building, plants and animals, lichens, mosses, dragonflies, doodlebugs, ladybugs, they all lived right here. Did you know that asexual and bisexual sex took place right here? The algae divided into 2 cells from 1. And so think about what lived here. Now, the day that we built the building here, where did we compensate for what lived here? That this was their home. Where did we compensate? On the moon? See, think about it. We didn't compensate anywhere. There's no way to take anything out of the ecosystem and go buy a piece of land and preserve it to replace this one. That one was already a piece of land also. All the pieces are interconnected. So when we got civilization going, how many American Indians lived in Texas at the time of settlement? And Texas Parks and Wildlife is our agency that has provided an estimate from the early writings and everything that we knew around the 1820 to 1823 period. How many American Indians lived here? Just make a wild guess.
100,000.
100,000. You know, it's pretty close because the estimate is 30 to 70,000 Indians. That's all tribes, everybody together. Do you think when they went out and did something that you could find it later? Do you think they made a mark on the land that you could go and find today? Did you know that the bison roamed over here and came into this county through the Blackland Prairie? They grazed here, and the southeastern herd of bison was estimated to have 3 million head in it. The early settlers said that when they met the herd, they had to stop and camp for up to 2 to 3 weeks waiting for the herd to go by. What do you think the ground looked like after the 3 million head went by? Was it like this floor? Was everything that was living now dead, churned up, destroyed, and changed? It was. But what do you think was the first thing that came back? After the bison left, and the bison book of 2003 tells us that the bison only grazed the same area every 1 time of year up to once in every 10 years. If we had to have the land for the bison herd today, we would have to take all of your land and put it into the allotment of 39 million acres to graze 3 million head of bison that were here before us. See, so what do you think came up? Now that it's bare and there's nothing alive there, what came up?
They left a lot of fertilizer.
Nobody got it right yet. Who? Forbs. What's the most common name for forbs?
Weeds.
Weeds came up. You know, this lady right here, she has a dog in her backyard. And it runs down this fence barking at the neighbor's dog, across the back fence barking at that dog, up the side fence barking at that dog. Over time, what did the dog produce in the backyard? A trail. What do you think about that? Use gave rise to a denuded area called a trail. Well, her son finally came to the house and picked his dog up. See, she'd been taking care of it for him, and he picked it up. Now there's no dog to stimulate the disturbance of the trail. What do you think was the first thing that came up on the bare soil of the trail in her backyard? Weeds. Y'all finally got it right. So, would you say that from disturbance in the environment, out of Mother Nature's bailiwick of tools, weeds are the first thing that come up? That is only normal and natural. If the weeds did not come up to transform the soil, life as you know it in Texas today would cease. Because weeds are Mother Nature's tool of recovering the land. And so 130 years ago, the bison were here. For 130 years, they haven't been here. From satellite imagery today, you cannot see one sign that the bison were ever in Texas. Nothing. Nothing exists to say that they were here. So if we don't share that knowledge with people, they'll grow up not knowing that bison were a native animal to the state of Texas. How much other knowledge? Question.
Point. Cibolo.
Cibolo.
The town of Cibolo is named after the bison. It's the Indian word for buffalo.
Okay, good. Did y'all get that? Cibolo Creek, Bison Creek. See, so we name things, don't we? Well, haven't y'all, as Master Gardener volunteers, been learning how to name things? Diseases of okra, diseases of cabbage, nutrient requirements for plants to grow. You've been learning the names because to be a master gardener, you have to know the language of gardening, the language of science that you apply in your yard. So he brought up the cibolo. And so if I go to the cibolo today, or if I go over to Bonnet and I go to the Cibolo Nature Center, which they have 8 acres, does it look like it did in 1823? Not one square, all of it's been changed by the previous owner. Just recognize that the property you own, you lease, you inherited, you rent today has been massaged and managed by at least 15 to 50 people before you. You bought inherit lease land that has already been modified in Bexar County. There's not 1 square inch of the original forest in East Texas remaining, not 1 acre. What do you think man did when he came into Texas on the OSR? Came into Nacogdoches. He came in at Tex Line up in the Panhandle. Matamoros came over to the non-existent Brownsville site. They came in at Tex Line and over at El Paso. Those early settlers, when they came in, they had a mission. What do you think it was? Was it to save the air? Was it to save the water in the Edwards Aquifer? They came here, they said, the wildlife is abundant, the air is clean, the water is clean, the soil is deep. Let's move to Texas and live happily ever after. But see, in the vision of us, we want the land to look a certain way because it is pleasing to us. So a lot of people get into the wildflower program. I worked with John Thomas in 1983, the president and owner of Wild Seed Farms. He got a 35-acre contract at Tomball to plant it in wildflowers. When he went to buy the seed, he found out that Green Horizon and other companies only had thimbles full of seed. They didn't have enough. All the companies in Texas didn't even have enough wildflower seed to plant 35 acres. So he created Wild Seed Incorporated at Houston, at Eagle Lake, and ultimately at Fredericksburg. And so the things that we see today are the things that he and his employees have generated. Well, look, what's the state wildflower? The bluebonnet. There are 6 of them. They're all the state flower. All 6 lupins. In 1901, the legislature of Texas named the Sandyland bluebonnet as the state wildflower. Lupinus subcarnosus. Because where did the people settle? San Felipe. All the way up in Stephen F. Austin's colony, and Bryan and College Station, where I live, are at the northern end of the colony. The Sandyland bluebonnet was native there. Since 1936, the Highway Department's been planting the Texas bluebonnet on all the major highways, state and federal in Texas. But where is the Texas bluebonnet native to? The Wildflower Center at Austin, the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center, in the 1984 book, The Wildflower Centers, says a wildflower is a plant that's native to a local area, has beauty and aesthetic qualities for humans. Where's the Texas bluebonnet native to? The granitic soils of central Texas. Llano, Kerrville, Fredericksburg, up to Brady, over to Bonnet. It is not a native plant to Bexar County. By definition, the Texas bluebonnet will never be classified as a wildflower in Bexar County. The Texas bluebonnet is thus classified as what in Bexar County? It's a weed. That's exactly right. Because the bluebonnet is an annual. Now, if I look at the Chisis Big Bend bluebonnet, which are part of the 6 named in 1971 by the legislature. Remember, the people of Texas beat them over the head until they changed the rule. And they made all 6 bluebonnets in 1971 the state wildflowers of Texas. See, even your children's textbooks have lied. Because they all say the Texas bluebonnet's the state wildflower. Not all 6 of them. Because the people who wrote that book don't have the knowledge. They incorrectly put it in the book. And so we end up believing that the Texas bluebonnet is the premier plant of the prairie. No, it's not. It's the premier weed of the prairie. Because the prairie was covered in what? What was the Edwards Plateau? What was the Blackland Prairie?
Water.
They were grasslands. And the Blackland Prairie hardly had any trees of any name on it. It was a solid, tall grass prairie. And the grass got this high on the prairie. And the Edwards Plateau is called a live oak savanna. Savanna meaning grassland with scattered live oak trees. So up until about 1950, we had no hanging trees on the Edwards Plateau because of the frequency of fire nailed the live oak to the ground, and in its 4 to 7 years it would come back and then get nailed to the ground again. It was a very hard thing and very few relic areas to find a tree where we can hang a criminal by the rope, you know. And so think about the change that's occurred, because when I come to San Antonio, and I went to the Alamo on my first trip in 1954, and I was 5 years old. And so it made a big impression on me. And in downtown San Antonio, there were big trees. But they had not been in the fire regime since 1823, or around the missions since 1773. See, think about the change. Even in the 17 coming into the 1800s. Well, what do people want trees for? Shade. Okay. It lowered the electric bill. Did you know in California, if you live in the forested area of California with the pine trees, and you have trees within 300 foot of your home, you just broke the forest law, and if your house burns down, the insurance company does not have to pay you. Who would be stupid enough to plant the fuel of the fire next to their house? So the law in California under the Fire Safe program says you cannot have a tree within 300 feet of your home if you live in the forested area of California. Now what do you think about electricity? There's more value in your home, isn't it, than the couple of dollars you're going to save by having the tree shade the house at one point in the day. And then you have to clean out the gutters all the time. And then you have to figure out what to do with the leaf litter. I don't know how many of you compost and put it in. But when we compost in the garden, what are we doing? Why do we put grass clippings and leaves and chicken manure and cow manure and donkey manure and all kinds of manure in the garden? Say fertilizer. Incorrect. Because see, you live on clay loam soil that's derived from limestone. The clay particle is the smallest particle you'll ever study in the soil. And if you don't have anything called organic carbon pushing those clay particles apart, there's no way water can get in your soil. So in a study that was done close to here, when we set up infiltrometers on original grassland prairie, we can get 9 inches an hour to infiltrate into the soil with no runoff. Does it rain a half an inch at your house and the water runs out to the street? Then you're in trouble. Because you're releasing water to the creek that goes to the river that alters the function of the natural features of a river with sandbars, gravel bars, and rock bars where bass lay their nests, where bluegills lay their nests, where the other fish are doing the thing in the river. Why does Lowe's and Home Depot and Walmart, who have 3-acre parking lots, have a containment pond next to their parking lot now. Because see, man realized in engineering that we can't control the water. We can't keep the water from destroying the creeks and the rivers and flooding man out of here. So we put it in a containment pond and we release the water slowly. Were y'all aware that that is a law? That if you're growing concrete and asphalt and rooftops, you're going to have a containment pond in San Antonio, Texas. You're already releasing more water out of the urban zone than nature can handle.
Are you talking about soil building?
Oh, I haven't got there yet.
Okay.
Yeah. So to have soil, where do we grow soil from? What's the source?
Organic matter.
No. Organic matter will never be classified as soil. Soil is clay, sand, loam, silt. Doesn't have anything to do. None of those have organic carbon in them. Well, where does your soil come from? Aren't y'all out there trying to grow soil in your yard?
Well, I'm doing it with organic matter. I'm doing it with compost. I'm doing it with mulch. And
So he better go buy Miracle Grow bags of potting soil and just put it out there, and it'll be over in 5 minutes, and he'll be out about $5,000.
no, the mulch is free.
Yeah, but see, the soil here in the county, was there something wrong with it?
There isn't any.
Is there something wrong with the soil in this county? It won't grow plants? Didn't early settlers say plants grew on everything in this county? Right down to the water's edge? So if the soil's changed on the Blackland Prairie due to farming, and farming mines the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the potassium, and other elements out of the soil, how many elements do plants need to grow? How many? 21 is correct. Used to be 20, but we have a 21 one now. And so who is the only fertilizer on the market that provides all 20? I just named it. Yeah, Miracle Grow. That's right. Miracle Grow is the only one. Farmers use nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. When we go back in there and try to revegetate the native plants where farming took place for more than 100 years, we have a problem. When I do my soil test, I can find out that 17 other elements are now limiting. And the plants won't grow that used to grow there. And so organic carbon in the form of mulch adds some nutrients. But the goal of mulching is to separate the particles so you can hold water in the soil. That's why we mulch. It's to hold water in the soil. Live oak leaves take how many years to break down in the soil? They're full of tannic acid, galactic acid, tannic acid of 3 other kinds. It takes a long time. They don't become fertilizer for your plants the next year. They have to decompose for several years. But see, on the prairie, the roots of the grass that lived on the prairie, 40% of the roots die every year. They decompose under the ground. They become the organic carbon of the original soil.
If you have a question about this video specifically, please email me. My email address will be bcmg, that's Bexar County Master Gardener. It's a private email, but I use those initials, bcmg61 at yahoo.com. And please tell me specifically the video to which you are referencing. If you have gardening questions in general, really a great place to start is your county Master Gardener program, and you can find them on the internet. This is the contact information for the Bexar County Master Gardener Association. Here's our email address. Here is our phone number. It's either a hotline or a helpline, depending on how much of an emergency it is or how bad your crisis is. If it's a crisis, it's a hotline. If it's not a crisis, you just have general question, it'll consider it a helpline. In Bexar County, we also have a Facebook page, and you are invited to become part of it and interact on our Facebook page. So I hope this video is helpful, and I'll see you at the next one.